Pay attention to the young woman walking alone along the quiet street on the edge of Rome. Her name is Sara Di Pietrantonio, 22 years old, gentle, hopeful, still learning how to build her own life. Behind her, a small white car rolls slowly through the darkness. Inside sits Vincenzo Paduano, 27, calm on the surface but burning with jealousy beneath. At 9:40 p.m., 22-year-old Sara Di Pietrantonio stepped out of her university building. She was studying economics, preparing for her next exam. Friends described her as disciplined, bright, and quietly ambitious. On that Saturday night, she wasn't heading to a party or a late dinner, just home, to rest before another day of studying. Sara walked toward the parking area where she'd left her small white Toyota. Her phone lit up with a message from her mother, asking if she'd be home soon. She replied, "Yes, I'm leaving now." Those would be her final words sent from that phone. From the outside, this was nothing more than a young woman finishing her day, but in another part of the city, someone else's evening was taking a darker turn. Vincenzo Paduano, 27 years old, was Sara's former boyfriend. Their relationship had ended months earlier. Friends say Sara had grown distant, realizing she wanted to move on with her life. Vincenzo, however, struggled to accept it. He worked as a security guard, someone who understood surveillance, schedules, and how to track a routine. For weeks, he'd been following Sara online. Messages left unanswered turned to frustration. Frustration turned into obsession. That night, he decided to drive toward the area where he knew she studied. The security cameras that lined the streets would later reveal his every move, a timeline that investigators would use to reconstruct the final hour of Sara's life. At 9:35 p.m., one camera caught his gray car idling near a gas station just a few blocks from the university entrance. The timestamp showed him waiting for several minutes, headlights dimmed. When Sara finally appeared, he pulled out slowly, keeping distance enough to remain unnoticed. The city of Rome has thousands of cameras, silent witnesses recording fragments of people's lives. On that night, they saw more than anyone realized. At 9:42 p.m., another camera positioned on a traffic light recorded Sara walking toward her car. A second later, in the same frame, headlights from a car behind her flickered briefly. Vincenzo's vehicle. Sara reached her Toyota, unlocked the door, and placed her bag on the passenger seat. She paused, adjusting her jacket, then looked down at her phone. Perhaps she was checking messages again, maybe scrolling absent-mindedly like any young person would. Nothing about her demeanor suggested fear, but in the shadow of a nearby tree, a figure stood still. The video didn't capture a clear face, only the faint outline of someone watching. Investigators would later enhance the footage frame by frame to confirm what they already suspected. It was Vincenzo. Sara started the car. The headlights illuminated the lot, revealing empty spaces and the sheen of wet asphalt. For a brief moment, everything looked peaceful, almost cinematic in its stillness. Then, movement. A silhouette crossing behind the car, disappearing out of view. The next few minutes weren't captured clearly, only fragments. A shadow approaching, a reflection in a car window, a blur near the passenger side. But something changed in Sara's behavior. At 9:45 p.m., a nearby CCTV camera captured her vehicle reversing suddenly, stopping and then the engine turning off. To an investigator, that stop was everything. Why had she turned off the engine? Did she notice someone approaching? Or did she think it was safer to confront the person rather than drive away? We'll never know for certain. Moments later, another camera on Via della Magliana showed headlights moving erratically. Sara's car. A witness who lived in an apartment above the street later told police she heard a car horn, short and sharp, followed by silence. At that same time, around 9:48 p.m., Vincenzo's phone pinged a cell tower near the scene. That digital trace would later become one of the key pieces of evidence. By 9:50 p.m., the area grew still again. Cars passed by occasionally, their headlights sweeping over an empty street. No one walking by realized what had just happened. An hour later, around 10:45 p.m., a driver noticed something unusual at the side of the road. A car door slightly open, lights still faintly glowing. He slowed down, unsure whether someone needed help. What he saw led him to call the authorities immediately. Within minutes, Rome's emergency services arrived. Police, firefighters, and investigators cordoned off the area. The scene was grim, but the focus quickly turned to the how and the why. Forensic teams began documenting everything. Tire marks, footprints, the pattern of the rain-soaked ground. One investigator later recalled how eerily quiet the street was, as if the city itself was holding its breath. What they found in that parking area raised countless questions. The car was still in neutral, keys inside, the interior disordered but intact. Sara's personal belongings, her bag, her phone, her notes from university, were all still there. Nothing had been stolen. This wasn't a robbery. It was something deeply personal. From the start, detectives suspected someone close to her. Within hours, they were combing through her phone records and message history. The same name appeared repeatedly: Vincenzo Paduano. By 1 a.m., police were already at his apartment. They noted his calm demeanor when answering the door. He claimed he hadn't seen Sara that night, insisting he'd been working a late shift. But investigators knew his schedule, and it didn't match. They asked to see his car. At first, he hesitated. When they finally inspected it, officers noticed signs that caught their attention: the distinct smell of cleaning products, traces of moisture on the exterior despite the dry weather hours earlier, and inconsistencies in his account of where he had been. Still, they needed more. That's when technology stepped in. In modern investigations, cameras never lie. Detectives began collecting footage from every possible angle around Via della Magliana: security systems from local shops, traffic cameras, residential door cams. Piece by piece, they built a digital timeline of the night. It took hours to synchronize the frames, but the pattern was unmistakable. At 9:41 p.m., Vincenzo's car appeared in one camera. At 9:42, Sara walked past another. At 9:43, his headlights turned off. At 9:44, both cars were seen within the same stretch of road. Every timestamp told a story. Every reflection on a wet surface, every shadow under a streetlight became a clue. Through technology, Sara's final walk was reconstructed second by second. When investigators presented the edited footage later, it played like a silent film. No dialogue, only movement and time. But in that silence, the truth was undeniable. Someone had followed her intentionally, waited for the right moment, and intercepted her path. Sara's family was informed early that morning. Her mother, who had sent that final text just hours before, arrived at the scene. The pain was indescribable. But even in grief, she demanded answers. She told reporters, "My daughter was afraid of no one. Whoever did this must face what he's done." As dawn broke over Rome, the quiet residential street became a center of investigation. Reporters gathered, cameras rolled, neighbors spoke in hushed tones. Everyone asked the same question: why? To understand that, investigators had to look back, into Sara and Vincenzo's relationship, into the signs that had been missed, and into how a love story could twist into something tragic. But that comes later. For now, the focus remained on the evidence, the digital footprints that would reveal the truth piece by piece. At police headquarters, detectives reviewed the CCTV frames again. They slowed the footage to 1-second intervals. In the corner of one image, under the glow of a streetlight, they saw it: Vincenzo's car following close behind Sara's. It was the final confirmation they needed. By sunrise, he was officially a suspect. It was a case that shocked Italy, not just for what happened, but for what it revealed about control, obsession, and the warning signs too often ignored. That night, Rome's cameras captured everything: the calm before the storm, the slow closing of distance, and the moment Sara's path crossed with the man she no longer wanted in her life. The truth was already there, hidden in pixels. Sara reached her car, unaware that Paduano was moving through the lot, using parked vehicles for cover. She started the engine, but the space was too tight to escape. Her instincts told her something was wrong. A shadow behind her, footsteps drawing closer. A metallic scrape broke the silence. Her hands tightened on the wheel. Moments later, the confrontation began. Sudden, deliberate, unavoidable. When police arrived, the city itself had already recorded the truth. CCTV, GPS data, and phone logs revealed every movement, every choice. Every reflection and shadow became evidence of premeditation. In court, the footage spoke louder than words. Analysts reconstructed the scene, showing calculated steps and desperate attempts to flee. The defense claimed impulse, but technology revealed intent. Vincenzo Paduano was sentenced to life imprisonment for murder and stalking. Outside the courtroom, people gathered with flowers and signs demanding awareness of gender-based violence. Years later, Via della Magliana moves on with life, cars passing, people walking, yet her story lingers. The city remembers, preserved in light, shadow, and memory. Sara Di Pietrantonio, remembered, never forgotten.